Um, so we're just so thankful you're here. And Lexplore is a 3-minute reading assessment that uses AI and eye tracking. And what that allows us to do is to quickly get a pulse on where a child's reading ability is. It alleviates any sort of subjectivity in assessment and gets the data that a teacher and an educator needs to drive instruction. And uniquely, with the power of eye tracking, we are able to capture silent reading ability for the very first time, which is really exciting. We've partnered with great companies like Actively Learn to share with you free tools, training, and reading videos, all of which you can find on our website or our social media pages. And before we get started today, let's go over those quick housekeeping items. We've muted participants for clear audio. Put your questions in the Q&A. We've disabled chat, so this just makes it a little bit easier for you to get your questions answered in real time. And we'll also save some of those questions that could be beneficial to everyone at the end of the Q&A session, at the end of today's webinar during our Q&A session. This will be a quick 30-minute webinar. We'll send you a link to the webinar recording, so if you want to share it with colleagues, that will be available to you. We'll email you that after the webinar, probably within the next 24 hours. And it will also be posted on our website, so you can go over to lexplore.com under webinars, and you can find those recordings. Also, there will be contact information on the last slide. So if you have questions like, how much does Actively Learn cost, or who do I talk to about that? If you'd like a free demo on the Lexplore reading assessment, all of that information will be on that final slide. So welcome, Jessica Bel and Tessa Polizzi. We're so thankful to have you today. And they just come with a wealth of knowledge about how to improve reading ability for all learners. And I think the shared belief that is most common amongst us is that, you know, these great reading practices that work really well in diverse populations are also great practices for all readers. So I hope you learn a lot today. And we're so thankful to have both Jessica as a reading specialist, a high school English teacher, and an ELL teacher who is currently teaching both in a hybrid capacity as well as virtual. And Tessa with Actively Learn, who's a curriculum designer. She's a graduate level educator and a former ELA high school teacher. So such a wealth of knowledge between the two of them. And without further ado, I'm going to let Jessica go ahead and take it from here. Thank you, Jessica.
Thank you. The first thing we'd like to discuss is really clarifying some terms. And so when we discuss who exceptional learners are and what we mean by that, when we look at diverse populations in mixed ability classrooms, that could refer to students who receive English language development services, which we know is called by a variety of acronyms across the country, depending on where you are, including EL, ELL, or ELD, ENL, and ESL. We could be referring to students who receive special education services, and that could be a specific learning disability or even dyslexia. We could also be discussing students who receive gifted and talented enrichment services, and you're really looking for more ways to provide extension and enrichment activities for those students. Or we could have students with knowledge gaps. Maybe we have students who are refugee students or who have been out of the traditional classroom or for whatever reason have missed some schooling and do have those knowledge gaps. And so how do we work with those students when they're mixed in a classroom with students who are on the traditional grade level? So we'd really like to look at scaffolding and what is scaffolding. Scaffolding refers to intentionally using instructional techniques and strategies to assist students in understanding. So these are those things that you are doing in the classroom to help those students be able to perform at grade level. I do want to note that a key difference between scaffolding and modifications is that the goal is to move a student toward greater independence. So when we think about scaffolding in construction, or if you look at our picture here, scaffolding is temporary. It's not designed to be permanent. It's designed to be removed when the student no longer needs that support. And so when we think about moving children on a continuum towards greater independence, we do want to start with scaffolding and then gradually pull some of those things back when my student is confident and capable. Because in the real world, they aren't going to get a lot of scaffolding. Some of the things that are built in to Actively Learn that make scaffolding easy can be accessed in the roster tab. So when all your students are enrolled, you have a roster tab where you can see the student's name and information. You can see when they joined your class. And then you can see this column on the right that says extra help, and you note that in the roster setting. By doing that, you're indicating to the Actively Learn platform that your students will receive extra help. That could be extra help summaries, notes, questions, supports. It could be question stems. And when you set that up in your roster, you do not have to go in individually to each assignment and make those settings again, right? You've done it once for the class, then all of the assignments that you give those students, the people who you have denotated that need extra help will receive that extra help. Now, obviously, the setting can be changed at the teacher's discretion, right? It's not permanent, it's not locked. You might have a student that really works really hard and is remediated well, and or has really grown in their reading capability and they don't need as much support. And so you can go back into the roster and you can change that setting. When you are working in the traditional classroom, face-to-face, if you call it on-site, right? And we're looking at ways that we can group instruction. You could set a purpose for reading with the assignment directions. We know that setting a purpose really helps students know what they're supposed to be looking for while they read. And we can also activate prior knowledge with the pre-reading question. And this is a great way to start a whole class discussion before you're reading, right? You can ask this question, have the students respond. My students really love to watch, like, when more people answer, how the poll percentage changes as more students answer. And on this screenshot also, you can see an example of one of the extra help summaries that are available to some of the students when you have denoted extra help. So this is a screenshot actually of an Actively Learn selection. And one of the things that I really like about using it in a face-to-face classroom is that I can model think alouds really well, because the notes I've already built in, or I've placed them, or maybe I'm using a piece from Actively Learn that already has instruction layered into it. And I can use those notes to help me demonstrate what a think aloud is with all of my students. This is going to help building background. It's going to help them to be able to connect the ideas, especially when I've used pictures. So modeling think alouds with pictures is a huge asset to students. It's a great scaffold for working with your English learners or your students who are below level at reading. And this really allows you to do that for all students. So as we start to look at virtual learning, we know that some is synchronous and some is asynchronous. So remember that synchronous learning happens at the same time. So if you are teaching virtually synchronous, like you're having a class meeting time, or say everyone's going to log on at 9:30 and we're going to do things together via Zoom or Google Meet or a video chat, or even everyone's going to log on to Actively Learn at the same time. If you're using a video conferencing platform, the teacher could read and model think aloud while the students follow along, just like in a traditional classroom setting. The teacher would be able to screen share for whole group sections, wait for students to answer, and have class in a very traditional kind of setting. So you can also have students use Actively Learn at the same time. The teacher can monitor your class assignments as the students are answering those polls, as the students are doing short answer responses. The teacher is able to address that as it's coming in. So one of the things that can happen is that a teacher can return an answer during a class session. Oh, I need you to please add more information. I need you to be more specific. I need you to correct your grammar, right? And your students can still see those poll results happen live while you're still virtual. You can also use assignments marked as a quiz or an assessment. So you could use Actively Learn synchronously. Everyone could log on at the exact same time and go ahead and take a quiz that you've denoted as a quiz. And that way you have that real-time virtual quiz grade. Okay. Asynchronous learning happens at different times. So if you are using a model where students are at home in different situations, and maybe some students are logging on in the morning and some students are logging on in the afternoon, and you're like, well, how can I help my students with that? One suggestion could be that you could record a screencast video with instructions for the students for them to complete the assignment at their own pace. You can also assign multiple assignments to allow for student choice. You can level the text, and you can individually provide instruction for guiding students to the appropriate choice. So in your roster, you can also set up groups, which is a little slightly more advanced, but it's not very complicated. And then you can assign specific groups, or you could just allow different students to choose different texts. You can also assign the groups, like I said, and you could meet with each small group. So if you're doing asynchronous learning, you can still schedule those different times. I'm going to meet with this group at 10. I'm going to meet with an enrichment group at 11. At 11:45, we're doing ELD instruction with a group of Ls or ELs. And you might have a group of students with special needs, or a group who needs to focus on one remediation or one specific skill. If you have students that are really struggling with inferencing, you can assign them all the same tasks, or you could assign one time to meet with that specific group of students to go over that skill. In a hybrid or blended model, students are both in-person and virtual. So some ideas for using Actively Learn to support hybrid or blended or virtual learning. You might model a shorter text when the whole class is together to show the students your expectations and how to utilize the platform. Again, this is when I'm really going to hit like my think aloud and using the features, making sure that when we're together, we're working on some of those built-in text features and platform features of Actively Learn. You could assign text to students according to their need for virtual instruction. So if the whole group does a mentor piece together, then you can assign different small group texts when they're on their at-home day. You could also allow for student choice. You could do that different built-in remediation, allowing students to get the support that they need on specific pieces. You can also continue to use Actively Learn for assessment as directed by each school, like virtually or in person. So if you have a test quiz that you'd like to use from Actively Learn, which is a great way to get that done, then you are able to go ahead and watch the students take that as the assignment is being done. And you can also conference in person or virtually regarding data or feedback. So if you have a hybrid model and your students are in class one day and then at home the next day, on that home day during virtual time, you could schedule a conference, or you could conference in person depending on your need. So Actively Learn also allows for some built-in or enrichment opportunities. So you can sort text by grade level and Lexile level. So you would be able to help students locate Actively Learn's library, which also would allow them to look for further reading in a topic that interests them. The student library is amazing, and it's towards the bottom of the student view, but it's a very amazing resource for a lot of students. So another way that you can work with enrichment and extension opportunities is that Actively Learn has pre-sorted curriculum units and text sets, and these allow teachers to foster your research with curated articles from a credible source. So if I'm teaching research, but in this world of blended learning or hybrid learning or virtual learning, and I don't have time to help students really understand what a credible source is, I can still assign them a text set from Actively Learn that we know are credible sources, and then they don't have to bother, like, we don't have to take the extra time to look through all those different sources. I know these are articles that are credible. I know that they are true, and my students would be able to use them. They also, all the text sets have materials that are written at a variety of Lexile levels, so they are more accessible for different students. So when you're sorting, as you can see, this allows you to sort by Lexile level and by grade. So I can work with students who are reading at the 400 level, if that's a student who has a learning disability or who is just learning English as a second or a third language. But then I also have some students in the same class who might be reading in the 1400s, who might be well on their way to studying to be a doctor or a lawyer and really need that extra content support. And so I can support all of those things by Lexile whenever I'm searching for assignments for my students. So when you're working with your students, teachers can support students by utilizing the extra help features, adding notes, pictures, and videos, adding stems or question support. So as a teacher, these are the things that I can build in to support my students, whether or not they're in front of me or they're at home. I can build in extra help features. I can build in the notes. I can build in the pictures. I can build in the videos, right? I know, oh, my students are going to have a question about what does this look like? And I can go ahead and I can add that in. In this example, you can see under the definition, the phrase yellow wood suggests the season of autumn, and I have a little person with the extra help. You can note, in the note feature, you can indicate if a note is for all students or for extra help only students. And so if we think back to the roster tab where we denotated which students needed extra help, this is where you can kind of see what that example looks like on a question, in a reading, as a note. This particular question also has some extra help support for questions. And again, that will only show up for students who you've selected extra help in the roster. You can also help teach your students to advocate for themselves and to use Actively Learn's features themselves. So one of the things I really like is adjusting the reader settings for background color or font size. So if you have a student who really struggles to read on a screen, or they have some eye strain issues or some visual issues and you need a different color, that's very easy to do. You can teach students to set that. You can teach students to change the font size. There's also a Hear It tool. You can highlight a selection of text. It'll read it out loud for your students. You can also see it'll highlight and take note. It'll define, it'll translate. So Actively Learn has built-in features that if you teach your students how to use the features, it will make it easier for them to be able to read more independently and to read more deeply and get more out of the reading on their own than if they didn't have this tool. As we look at working with diverse populations, often that means you're collaborating with additional professionals. You might be able to co-author across common planning, grade level, or PLC teams. You can co-author, so we can work on a piece together. You can share assignments with other teachers. If you're co-teaching with an English language development specialist or a speech language pathologist specialist, or if you're co-teaching with a special education teacher, you can share the workload. When we're co-authoring, we can share the workload. If you work with special education teachers or teachers of service, teachers of record, or ELD specialist teachers, you can access those assignments in advance to add supports. You can add pictures, you could add the extra help notes, and you can help support those students virtually, right? You can work on the scaffolds. So even if we're not having common planning time together because we're teaching virtually, I can share a selection with another teacher in advance. They can add the pieces that they need to best support the students. And you can share assignments with interventionists to work with a small group. And all data can be shared and tracked among co-teachers. We're going to come back to the data in a few minutes. Actually, we're going to come back to data right now. So if you are a teacher who works with diverse populations, you know that you have to have data. And the data is readily available. It's easy to read. You can print reports. You can sort for the whole class. You can sort by individual students. But so in this example, you can see proficiency by standard for the whole class, or you could change it to an individual student. And you can also see proficiency by DOK level. So if you're preparing those progress monitoring sheets or you're looking for student accountability information, these tools are very beneficial. You can also see this is a support, or I'm sorry, this is a suggestion and recommendation for an individualist student. So it would make conferencing a lot easier to be able to look at a recommendation like this and say, well, these are the specific standards that you did well on. These are the things that you really need to work on. It's also easy to break down per standard. If you have a standard that is a student's goal for their IEP or for their ILP, and you're trying to progress monitor for that goal, you can easily sort by standard, or you could also sort by engagement. When you look at the grade book, again, you're also able to sort by student, or you look at your class average for different things. You can sort by assignment or look at the whole piece. You can sort your gradebook by standards if your district has standards-based grading and you're interested in seeing how they did on specific standards. Maybe you have a power standard or a standard that you're really trying to hit. And you can also sort it by activity and engagement. So you can see the number of minutes and the amount of time that students have spent on a specific piece. You can see how many questions they answered. If they asked for an answer revision and you allowed it, you can see the number of that, the number of those. You can see how many times they've looked up vocabulary words or used the translation tool. And you can look at if they have written their own notes or shared a note with the teacher. So when we're looking at data to prove that students are reading deeply, some of these tools are very easy to learn. So we have built in some question time for Actively Learn. So I'm going to start my video.
There we go.
There we go.
So Tessa, are there a couple questions in the Q&A that we should answer out loud? There were a few common questions in there.
Yeah, actually there weren't a ton of questions coming in, so I don't know if anybody has any that they would like to share. The one that did just come up is about whether or not we have Portuguese, which we could hop over and look. I do know we have over 100 different languages available. Basically anything that Google Translate has available, we also have available. And let's see, there's more questions popping in now, so let's see. Oh yes, Teresa, there is a way to see the student view. I don't know if, Jess, if you just want to go over to Actively Learn, we can show that. But Teresa, if you have used it before, if you've not, in the top right-hand corner, we have kind of your icon that shows your profile. If you click on it, there's a way to just, it says like see student view, which is a really powerful tool because A, it lets you see everything that students see, but then also for me, I know when I use it in the classroom, I went to student view a lot when I wanted to present my screen to students, so they wouldn't be able to see, you know, student data, they wouldn't be able to see correct answers, and so students and I would be all looking at the same thing together when that screen was displayed. And
would you like me to sign into a demo account?
Yeah, you can sign into any account, it doesn't really matter. And then let's see. Oh, you're very welcome, Bruno. And oh, okay. And Chrissy's asking about standards. We have all state standards available, and that's going to be part of one of the premium plans where you can have all your state standards by grade level as well available and Actively Learn. And then Susan, yes, FERPA and COPA compliant. For those of you in New York City, or New York, I forget the specific name of the like technology accessibility requirements, but also compliant in that regard. Selena, yes, we're going to be emailing out, this is on the slide here, I think, or on the first slide. Melissa will email out the presentation to everyone, so you're all going to get one. For those of you who are looking for pricing, I know a lot of people want pricing, and I totally get that. We're not really equipped to give that information, but you can either go to the plans page and fill out a form there, and somebody can talk to you about your specific school, your specific needs, what are you actually looking for, which part, there's different plans available, science, social studies, English, you know, what exactly are you looking to purchase, so they can help you with that a little bit better. And then let's see.
So Tessa, is it safe to say that should we maybe connect them with the sales executive or account executive or something like that? They can send us an email and we'll get them connected to the right person.
They can, one of two options. So here on this slide that Jess is showing If you email info@activelylearn, they can help you. And then also if you go to activelylearn.com to the plans page, there's going to be information about like what's in the paid plan versus what's in the free plan. And there's a form that can be filled out there that will also go to our sales staff that will put you in contact with somebody that's in your state, in your area to talk to.
Okay. Michael had a question about Clever. I know Lexplore works with Clever. Do you have an answer to that question?
Yeah, we absolutely do integrate with
Okay.
Clever on a paid plan, and then on the free plan, you can integrate with Google Classroom. And then to answer Marianne's question, is there a premium version or is it all free? There's both free version and premium version. So there's a lot you can do with the free version. And then obviously much more that you can do with the premium. And, oh, Joanna, our materials and resources are updated all the time. We're constantly adding to our catalog. If you kind of look at your homepage for your subject area, you're going to see there's always new stuff being added there. It's a constant push and then updating, regularly updating to try to make sure that everything we've got in our catalog is up to date, up to our current editorial standards. And let's see, I'm sorry, scanning questions. Yeah, Liana, hopefully I'm saying that correctly. Yeah, if you email info@activelylearn.com, or Melissa's email address is also there, we'd be happy to answer any further questions that you have in the future. And if you're in Actively Learn specifically, there's, you know, the classic little question mark icon in the top right that will connect you to our help center. And we've got Danny and Maddie who are like always available to answer questions. So you can type a little question in there and they'll get back to you really, really quickly. Let's see.
So we had a question about, is this an introduction to an application that teachers can use in mixed ability classrooms? And the answer to that question is yes. So there were certain techniques that Jessica went over in regards to, you know, how you can leverage this sort of technology, both in the free space as well as the paid space, in a virtual classroom, in a hybrid classroom, if you're actually on site. And so if you have specific questions about that, I would definitely reach out here on these email addresses and you can find out more information. I think we're going to go ahead and wrap up unless there was something critical, Tessa, that you saw that maybe we need to answer right now.
I guess there's some people who signed up for a 4 p.m. training as well. You might want to address, Melissa. Do you have another training later in the day?
Yeah, so we don't have a training later on today. We do have another series coming up in September, but maybe it's an Actively Learn. You know, I think you guys probably have some training videos, things like that, that maybe you do from a technology perspective that maybe is posted on your website. I'm not sure.
Yes, yeah, feel free to email and we can.
Yeah, it's not us. I'm not sure which company you're referring to, Selena. Sorry about that, but it's not Lexplore. So, well, let's go ahead and wrap up. Thank you so much for attending today, everybody. We hope that you will join us next month. We have a series called the Clear View of Reading series, where each day and each webinar, we look at each of the 5 components of reading. And so that'll be really helpful for all teachers. And please head over to our websites. You can go to activelylearn.com or you can go to lexplore.com. And both of our websites have a lot of free resources, trainings, webinars to equip you as we go into sort of this uncharted territory this year of what learning is going to look like. And I also want to encourage you to follow us on social media. So you could follow Lexplore Inc. on social media as well as Actively Learn. A lot of great resources and comments from other educators like yourself, just to point you in the right direction and to support you. And we thank you for all your hard work and everything that each and every one of you do to support students and learning around the world. We're really thankful for all of the people that came from outside of the United States and joined us today. It's always wonderful to see people excited and passionate about teaching all learners how to read effectively. So thank you, Jess and Tessa, for your generosity of time and helpful tools. And again, this recording will be posted on the lexplore.com website as well as emailed to all of you. Thank you so much and have a beautiful day.